All right, it's noon. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to our second session of Serving Our Athletes. Some housekeeping before we get started. The session will be recorded. As a participant, everyone is muted. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A section at either the bottom of your screen if you're on a laptop or at the top if you're on an iPad. If you see a question that you would also like an answer to, you can upvote the question so we can see that multiple participants are interested in the same question. Becky will present for about 20 to 25 minutes, and then Tara will ask any questions from the Q&A section for Becky to address. Recordings of the session can be found on USTA.com on the Serving Our Athletes news page. So let's get started. USTA Missouri Valley is fortunate to partner with Children's Mercy Sports Medicine Center, which is nationally ranked by US News and World Report. Today's session will focus on mental wellness with Becky Wiseman, and I'm now going to turn it over to Becky.
Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you guys having me. This is a little bit new way of presenting for me, but I will definitely be willing to give it a try. I am Becky Wiseman. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I have been with Children's Mercy Sports Medicine Department for 2 years now, coming up on my 2-year anniversary. And the work I do there is with athletes. Some of them are in recovery from injury or have been injured and looking to possibly go into surgery or a long-term recovery. So they refer to me by providers such as surgeons, doctors, PTs, and even athletic trainers have a referral process. But I also work with athletes who have not experienced injury, but may be experiencing some performance anxiety or depression, or just kind of being a teen in these days. So that is what I do professionally. Let's see if I can get this to move. Oh, goodness. Okay, there we go. So who am I personally? Sports therapist. I've been in a mental health provider for over 20 years. I have been in kind of all different environments, both at risk, high school, and really with Children's Mercy began my specialization in working with athletes. Had a lot of experience with athletes in the high school setting, but really kind of my focus went primarily to athletes working with sports med. I'm a mother too. I have a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, so we are all cozy and home together with things opening up. As you can imagine, my 16-year-old cannot wait to get out of the house. So we'll have to kind of navigate that. But I'm also, both my kids are in soccer, and so I consider myself a soccer mom, although I don't have a minivan. I do have enough fold-out chairs that I feel like that kind of puts me in that category. But my husband is also a coach, so I've kind of been in that world for a good long time. And most days it's great. It has been kind of in some ways a nice break over these last several weeks where we haven't had training, we haven't had practice. Our weekends are actually like, what are we going to do this weekend situation, rather than knowing for sure for the past 3 weeks what we're going to do each weekend, where we're going to be at what time, at what field. And I'm sure a lot of parents are kind of experience that as well. So it's kind of a nice feeling, but also really missing that community that we all build in that sports world. Okay, so we didn't ask for it, but we got it. So this break and kind of taking us all out of our routine and taking our athletes really out of their sport. It's not anything that we asked for, but now we have it and we have to deal with it from our end and also help our athletes deal with it. So kind of when asked to speak about how do athletes deal with a pandemic, kind of in my mind, I was like, well, I'm not really sure. I've never been through this before, and neither have they. But really, after giving it some thought, it's really relatable to my athletes who are returning from play after injury. There's a lot of concern that kind of they have, a lot of fears, a lot of anxieties that they have about returning to play. Are they going to be fit enough? Have they lost their skill set? How will things be, since they are going to be different going back. So a lot of those same kind of fears and anxieties that you're athletes may be experiencing at this point. I work with a lot for my kids who are in recovery and going to be returning to play. So one thing that I work with a lot of the athletes, and even during this time, because I've been doing telehealth with my athletes, and so still speaking with them during this time, is really finding value in this time, because things are different and we can't participate the way that we have in the past. So a lot of times what I found is my athletes who are incredibly hardworking, they have their goals, they set them, they do their activities, all of that is, what they're used to doing. And then all of a sudden now they don't have that type of, schedule. And so they find themselves just kind of like doing nothing. So it's kind of those extremes that they swing. And some of them started really, really strong when this all happened. Like, I'm going to train, I'm going to do this. And then now I've kind of been like, okay, we're 6 weeks later and we're all just kind of like, I guess I'll just watch another episode of Netflix. So really trying to help them, what are some things that they can find value? And really, breaks do give us time to reevaluate some of our goals. So it kind of gives us a time to step back and go, what is something that we really could improve on or work on? And that's not just physically and skill set wise, but that also is mentally. And this is a really good time during this break to say, okay, mentally, where can we improve? Or where can we grow with our mental performance and our mental gain? How can we see this as an advantage for us rather than, a disadvantage and putting me behind? It gives breaks for redefining some conclusions about ourselves. So a lot of athletes, by their competitive level or where they are on a team or where they are compared to their teammates or people that they are in competition with, they can start kind of defining themselves and come to some conclusions that maybe aren't super helpful. So some of the things I ask my athletes is, what conclusions have you come to about yourself in this time? And, that could be, well, I can't do anything because I don't have this, or I can't do this because I don't have this, or I need someone really pushing me. If no one's pushing me, then I can't do it. So looking at, well, can we start kind of redefining some of those conclusions rather than saying, since I don't have my coach yelling at me, I really can't do it. Or since I don't have my personal trainer, I just can't work out. So let's redefine some of those conclusions. Let's open that world up a little bit so that we don't put ourselves in a block or in a box and then find, we really are limiting ourselves because of what we've defined for ourselves, rather than, utilizing this time to really open up some possibilities. This break also can give us time to develop our new system in order to achieve our goals. So one of the things that you may have heard from your athletes, and I hear often mostly during this time, but also during time of recovery, is just, I don't have the motivation. And, I think that sometimes can throw our athletes off because they typically are highly motivated individuals. They set a goal and they really work for it. And so, I talk to them about not necessarily getting stuck in the dialogue inside their head, or I don't want to go out. It's too hot. It's too cold. That show starts in 5 minutes. No one else is doing that. Why am I doing it? So rather than getting stuck in that dialogue, to go ahead and start developing their system. So a system is what, it's kind of different than a schedule. A schedule is like, what time you do this, what time you do this, what time you do this. A system is more of like, what are things you're putting in place for you to achieve your goals. So if it is, your system is each day you're going to, at least put one nutritious meal in, or your system is each day I drink so many ounces of water a day, or each system is, I try to do a bedtime routine so I can, get a restful night's sleep. So developing certain things within your system. And if you're like, I'm not really sure where to start, for me, in athletes, it's a great place to start of, okay, within your system, you should have one thing for your body, one thing for your mind, and one thing for your community. So your system each day, you should fulfill those 3 things: mind, body, community. Community right now for me and a lot of people is this household, is this family. So there's not much outside of that right now. At some point it will return to their soccer community and teams community. But right now it's our house. So that could look like emptying the dishwasher. It could look like, mowing the grass, helping, your sibling or helping your parent get something done. But mind, body, and then community is a good way of helping them start really seeing some systems that can be set up in their world. It also gives us time to practice our own positive growth and support our positive growth. So if you kind of look at, I have a kid who is, really high anxiety all the time. Well, there's some ways of positive growth through, why don't we start developing within our system some breathing exercises? Why don't we kind of look at how to sit still for 5 minutes during our day and bring our thought back to our breath? So, that's one thing I work with athletes on all levels, younger to professional level is, how do you sit and refocus your mind back onto your breath? And that is a skill. And if athletes think, well, I'll just get into a game situation, or I'll just get into a situation of high stress and I'll just, count on my breathing, they're going to find that not as helpful as if it's something that they have really developed within their system and they have started to practice. And I've always said, like, the bread and butter of that whole breathing exercise is letting your mind wander and then bringing it back to the present, bringing it back to your breath. That is how we learn how to focus. Okay, I'm going to speed up just a little bit. Okay, so mind at rest, or the mindset, a body at rest wants to stay at rest. So a lot of us have found we do have more time on our hands, and sometimes that feels great. And then sometimes it's like a million times harder than to get ourselves moving. And I explain this a lot to the athletes that I work with. They're like, I would never miss a practice. I would never miss a run. I would never miss this. And I haven't gotten on my Zoom practice yet. Well, because your body's at rest, and it kind of is like, this is great, let's stay here. So there is going to be some adjustment and pushing it out of that place. So motivation, like I said before, and many players are kind of feel like they have a lack of it, and that's a really unusual place for them. And so it kind of freaks them out a little bit. And what I want them to know is you don't have to be freaked out about it. Motivation, will come back around. So what we want to do, again, is help our players start setting their intentions. So if they're like, I have no motivation, okay, you don't need it. I don't need you to have motivation. I just need you to say the 2 things that you're going to do. What are 2 intentions you have for your sport? What are 2 intentions that you have for your training? So we don't even have to need motivation. Like, no motivation, no problem. My guess is it will start coming back once you start getting your body moving again. Putting intentions and a system in place overrides that need. And I have a lot of athletes who kind of like lean on, or, they kind of look forward to, because that's what makes them feel good. And when there's an absence of that, then they kind of find like something's not right. Well, like, nothing's really right now. Everything's a little bit different. So feeling motivated like we did in the past doesn't really make sense for all the changes that we've occurred over the last several weeks and several months. It's important for intentions to be player-led. So as a parent, I can name like 17 things my 16-year-old could and should be doing right now to make himself better as a person, as a player, as a human, as a student, as all of it. But really, the intentions and system do need to be player-led. So, having them kind of think about what is important to them. And that's one of my favorite questions. I mean, there's 2 questions that I think are really helpful for our players. And one is, what's most important to you? And second, is what you're doing helpful? And that kind of helps them kind of go, oh, okay. When you have to look at your behavior and go, is what you're doing helpful? And then no, it's not. Okay, then you got to look at why do I keep doing it? What is it about that I keep doing? So intentions are are kind of nice. And I use that term quite often because I feel like intentions give us a little bit more wiggle room and movement than goals. For me, goals are kind of like, that's consistency. That's what stays consistent. And I often talk to my athletes, like, what's your big bubble goal? Like, what is up there? And that's like shooting for the stars. Like if it is to play professionally, if it is to play Division I, if it is, to win nationals, anything that is like big bubble, like that is really what you want. And maybe a little bit off into the future, but that is going to stay consistent. I kind of have them set. Then their intentions are what they can do on a regular basis. So this and systems go really hand in hand. So if their intentions daily are to eat well and are to, practice every day, things like that, then how do they work that into their system? What does that look like for you? So what would your day look like? What would you have to tell yourself? What were your behaviors? Are there any barriers to that? So our intentions, can start that question a little bit deeper of what would keep you, what's going to help you get to complete your intentions, and what's going to maybe get into the way of that, create barriers for that. Intentions can change once they've been achieved or they become a part of a player's habits. So different than goals that stay consistent, intentions do change. So if someone has, where their big thing was, I want to make sure I get, 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night, or I get on a sleep pattern, which I know most of the teenagers I'm working with right now are not on a sleeping pattern. Their sleeping patterns have been blown out of the water. But once they've been able to then kind of develop that and that becomes habit, then it really no longer has to be an intention because they're already then doing that. And then intentions give us our direction for our system. Like I said before, they kind of go, okay, then how do we put these things into practice so it's a part of what I do? So then leading into systems. Systems help us achieve our intentions. Developing a system organizes our efforts, and making sure that we create time and space for those intentions. You don't have to want to do it. That is one of the biggest things that I think a lot of teenagers kind of get stuck in. It's like, I don't want to. And then I can always kind of back and say, that's fine. You don't have to want to, you just have to do it. So then what do we have to put in place for you just to do it? And the whole time you can be saying, this is stupid. I don't want to do it. My mom's making me do this. Okay. Or, my system, oh, fine. You can do whatever you want as long as the end product is you are getting it done. Because typically, our kids, as probably all of us, feel a sense of accomplishment when we do have some productivity. That doesn't mean 24/7. And I've told, my players throughout this time this is probably kind of our first time in our lives where we do have time for a lot of things. We have time for relaxation, but we also have time for training. We also have time for redefining. So, I'm not saying never to sit and, play video games. I'm just saying, your system wants to include more of your intentions than just, scoring the highest on your, and I don't even know if kids score high on video games anymore. I don't know how they win. I don't know if anyone ever wins in video games anymore. It's just like an ongoing game. But the mindset of the system is, this is what I do, regardless of my thoughts or feelings. This is what I do. This is how this is how I operate. And so if we kind of help them get into that mindset, it's a really helpful way of them feeling a little more productive about what they're doing. And with their system, we don't want to set them up for failure. We don't want to say, for 9 hours a day, you're going to be eating well, studying, doing your training, going and mowing the neighbor's lawn. And so then by, 10:30, you'll be asleep in bed. I mean, there has to also be time for, yes, Zoom or FaceTime your friends. Yes, Disney Plus, watch a film. All that stuff we want to also include, or give them that kind of flex time as well, because if we don't, we're kind of setting them up for failure. So if we kind of look at what does this translate about returning, and in a lot of athletes, I spoke with a group of athletes this week, and we talked about, confidence in returning, because we haven't been operating. We haven't been kind of, practicing and looking how someone else is doing, and am I doing as well as they're doing? I mean, so we're not really, I think a lot of athletes are like, I'm not really sure where I'm at right now. I have been doing this, or I haven't been doing that, but I'm not really sure where I'm falling right now. So that can really kind of question their confidence. So one of the things is we want to know that, it really is kind of normal for them to kind of feel a little bit lost in this. It is normal for them to feel like, I'm not really sure what I should be doing right now. And we want to help the players connect with, that there has been work done. If you're setting your intentions and if you're developing your system, you're doing something of value for your sport. So it's not, maybe you haven't been doing those 3 miles a day, but you are doing something that's intentional for your sport, and that's going to be helpful. So, the truth is that athletes can do tough things. That's kind of what they are used to doing. And we want to remind them of that. Like, this is going to be tough, but good thing you're used to doing tough things. Good things, you're used to being challenged. You're used to, kind of going in and not knowing exactly what to expect, but doing your best in it. And so that's what we want you to continue with, as we get back to play. Okay, so emotions, that is a thing. And like I said, I deal mostly with teenagers. I have a couple preteens, and then I have older. But emotions can always be an interesting thing. And in my household, with 2 teenagers, we've dealt with like every one of these, I don't know, a million times a day. So the thing about our feelings, we can sometimes get a little bit, and oftentimes what I'm talking to athletes about is let's not freak out about feelings. Okay. We have them, and we have a lot of them, and they come rapidly, and a lot of times they go away rapidly. So a lot of times, just normalizing the feelings. But if you do find that your player is having kind of extremes and, happening often, part of that is, they're not probably utilizing the coping, which is their sport and activity, which they have in the past. So they're going to feel a little bit more of like, I don't know what to do here. So one of the things that I often tell them is just, maybe it's just time to start noticing your thoughts and feelings, and noticing your reaction to them. It's not about changing them right now. Let's just kind of look into it and see what's going on. Like, let's notice what's happening. And also speak about flexibility. Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to kind of figure this out as we go along, because we're not really sure. I'm not really sure how I'm going to react, with you going back and getting back onto this schedule. So there's going to need to be some flexibility as we kind of return to some, form of life that may reflect of what we did before. They can practice flexibility by trusting the hard work that they've done. So, if you find a player who's like, it has to be this, then it has to be this, then it has to be this, we do not venture off that track. One of the things that they may struggle with, if you have a player who may fit into a more rigid way, is, there may not be trusting that they are building their skill set or trusting themselves to be able to handle situations. So a lot of the work I do is about, I need you to trust that if a situation comes up that was unexpected, you're not going to freak out. You're going to be able to deal with it. If something comes up that, we don't necessarily like, typically, we're not going to run to our car, and speed home and give up on it. Our flexibility is, is knowing that we've done some hard work, and also trusting ourselves to be able to handle it. So whenever I see, kind of a player or even my own child kind of getting out of that window of emotional regulation, I mean, breathing, and I know kids hate it, the old count to 10 type of thing, they hate it. But research, will prove over and over and over, and studies again and again say, breathing is really what can change our biology, and within moments. So you can kind of, oh, sorry, can you guys still see the screen? Okay, good. Great, I cannot, so that's strange. But yeah, that breathing exercises can be really, really helpful. Oh, sorry, I've lost my screen. Let me see if I can. Okay, there I am. So that, telling them, okay, listen to your breath, hear your breath, concentrate on your breath are really good ways of kind of getting back into the present. And, you know, an athlete who can stay in the present and outside of their head is going to be one that can really help with their emotional control. Okay, so 3 steps of being present. This is kind of like my bread and butter. What I do with a lot of athletes is teaching them these 3 steps. And it's actually called the acceptance and commitment theory. And it's well-researched, evidence-based, but I've just kind of put it into more of a sports lingo. So what we want to do is, first of all, help them identify their emotion. So if you see them becoming a little bit dysregulated, you know, you kind of help, okay, what's going on here? You know, what's going on with your emotion? Looks like you're kind of frustrated. And helping them, you know, kind of give definition to what they're feeling. Because at that point, they're just kind of feeling. So we can help them say, yeah, it looks like you're a little bit worried or a little bit anxious or a little bit frustrated. So it helps them kind of identify that. The second step, oh boy, that slide got a little bit crazy. You want to help them accept the emotion without the need for a reaction. So, you know, yeah, looks like you're really frustrated. It makes sense. Things are very, very different than where they were before. So helping them accept that, yeah, you're going to feel a certain way when things are incredibly different. You're going to feel a certain way when you show up for practice, and rather than having 40 people there, there's 10. And maybe not your friends, or maybe, you know, people who you haven't played with before, or a different team because the numbers changed. Whatever thing is going to be happening, we want them to accept, yes, this is going to feel a certain way because things are a little bit different right now. And just then the last part of that is, once we help them identify and accept, then we want to help them go, okay, how do we move to what's most important? And I'm sorry, that's a little bit hard to read. You know, what's most important within the moment. And once they can kind of identify, well, it's just most important for me to get back out there. I just want to start playing again. Okay, if that's most important, then what will your behaviors, what will your actions, what will your thinking, what does that go to? So if it's most important to get out there and play again, then you're going to go out there and you're going to listen and you're going to be engaged and you're going to give it your all. That would be working towards what's most important. If it's most important to see your friends or be in the exact same group that you've been in before, then probably what we're going to need to do is, you know, go home and figure out how to, you know, FaceTime your friends, because that seems to be what's most important. So just kind of helping them get, once you decide, then your behaviors and everything should move towards that. Okay, blindsided. I love that picture. Blindsided. So again, we shouldn't be surprised that things are going to feel different. And we want to kind of prepare our kids for that. Yeah, this is going to feel a little bit different. Some of it's going to feel really good because you're getting back out there. And some of it is not going to feel as good because it is different. And we can either fight or we can embrace that change. And, you know, I think online school has been a big indicator of this. Like, either you fight this the whole time or we accept it and we embrace it and we do the best that we can. And your player will follow your lead. So as a parent, if we're like, oh, I cannot believe they're doing that, like, this is the worst, I hate this part, I hate that this has changed, then your player is going to kind of go along with what you do. If you can say, you know what, I didn't really expect that, I don't love this, but let's give it a try. This is how I'm going to adjust to it. This is what I'm going to do to adjust to it. Then you're kind of showing them, okay, this is how we work through difficult parts. This is how we adjust to difficult things. So they will follow your lead. They are watching. Okay, so, and I'm not sure, you know, how we want to do the question and answer, but I hopefully left, oh, I didn't leave a lot of time, I'm sorry, but I'm willing to take any questions.
You're okay, Becky. We're going to have Lindsay. I know we have one question, so I'm going to have her switch over and do the Q&A part with you, okay?
You bet.
Okay, so our question is regarding in your earlier discussion about reaching out to their community during this time. Should that be face-to-face actions with those physically around them, or is it something that people can do through FaceTime calls with a friend that falls in that category?
Both. Both. I mean, we do have to be very, very aware, that there are still social distancing, there are still limitations on what, what we're allowed and what's reasonable for right now for what we're going through. But, going out and picking up, if we go for a walk and we see trash as we're going for a walk, well, what about that be our community? And we start kind of just picking that up and collecting that. But for sure, reaching out, reaching out to grandparents, reaching out to friends, maybe someone that we haven't spoken with a while, that certainly is a bit of that community as well.
Perfect. It looks like we've had a couple more come in.
Okay.
How do you give hope to those athletes? What are you preparing for? My child is nervous. Season will be canceled this next year.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think, validating their disappointment, if it is, I'm in that very same boat, and had my 16-year-old come down and say, what if we don't have our season? Everything was kind of riding on this season. We've been waiting for this season, and, really just kind of validating their disappointment. You're right. That really is disappointment. And we're not really sure what that will look like. We're not really sure, how this is all going to pan out. But I do know that you'll be able to handle it, and I'll be here to support you. And you can come to me and, let me know about those disappointing things, and I will definitely hear you. But I do know that you're strong enough to handle it. And it may mean that we adjust your goals a little bit based on not having this season. So we can kind of work together on what that will look like. But I think we first have to validate that is disappointing, and that is gutting. And a lot of, I have so many seniors, and I have one senior who has been rehabbing for 9 months to get back to her season. And she was going to play her first game her senior year, and the season's canceled. So all of the rehab, everything that she had done, then she didn't get to kind of follow what she had really hoped for, that path that she'd been working to. And, the truth is, it's gutting. And so, we don't want to gloss over that, like, oh, it's fine, something to be disappointed about. Yes, there's a lot to be disappointed about, but I also know that you can handle it, and I will help you in, kind of moving forward in that.
Okay, great advice. Following that is, how can a coach best get athletes back into the game successfully?
I think, a coach's role is such a great role because it's, they are very influential, but not like the nagging parent. So it's kind of like the perfect influential role. And I think encouraging players, just kind of what I said, is it's now time to start pushing yourself. It's now time to start, kind of re-engaging in what kind of work what kind of work do you need to do to make you feel confident, come game time. And that may be, a month from now, that may be 6 months from now, but what kind of work do you need to start re-engaging in, and what kind of things do you need to start doing so that you at game time are going to be able to have that confidence? Because sometimes we believe self-talk is all about like, yeah, you can do it. Let's go. You're the best. For me, self-talk at its best and at its most effective is rooted in reality. So if the reality is, man, I did a lot of work. I kept my swings. I got, I went out there, several times a week to make sure I was getting the touches that I needed to get. That is where our really positive self-talk can be effective, when it is based on our reality and it's based on the work that we did. So as a coach, I would encourage them, how do you want to look walking out on that court? How do you want to feel walking out on that court? Your actions now need to start supporting that. So, here are the things I would have you follow. And if you want to be confident, coming back out, these are the things I would start re-engaging in now.
Okay, great. We're going to jump into the last question. Okay. And it is it better to allow your kids to meet face-to-face with social distancing, for example, on a lawn, or does it actually give kids more disappointment that they can't get close to their friends and do normal things with them?
I think, that's kind of based on your own child, but I really do think, and it also kind of based on the ages. I think when you have a young child, they're always going to run, want to run to their friends and want to hug, because the understanding of kind of what's going on, the younger they are, kind of more difficult they're going to have. So we also don't want to be so anxious. We take our young child out and then we're grabbing them. No, no. And so the interaction becomes negative because we, are like, you can't touch. No, don't get too close. Oh, you're too close. That to me is like, do it online then. But as they're older, I think, that face-to-face is a nice thing to have. I mean, I know for myself, like even, seeing my friend in the driveway, I'm like, oh my gosh, there you are. It's, it's a nice feeling. And what I tell, my 16-year-old who wants to be out, who wants to be with friends, he needs to show me that he is taking this seriously. He needs to show me that he's going to do the things, and he needs to communicate with me that he's going to do the things to keep himself and our family safe. And if he's blowing it off like, disinfectant, my mask, then I'm going to have a real hard time letting him, get together with friends, even in a social distancing. But if he can show me and if he can tell me these are the ways I'm keeping myself safe, my friends safe, and this family safe, then, I'm going to be a little bit more apt to allow that to happen. But I think the older, they get and the understanding that they have and their willingness. But if you have a kid who's like, nah, I don't care, that's just all stupid anyway, I'm going to be hesitant about, allowing them. And what I'll say to them is, I'd love to let you do that, but I'm first going to have to know that you know how serious this is and how seriously we're taking it. So once you can communicate that to me, then we'll have a conversation about you and your friends seeing each other at a social distance, respectful place.
That's great. Thank you so much, Becky.
You're welcome.
I love the part on the intentions and the systems, and I took notes for myself. I don't know if you work with adults, I might have an intention session with you. Thought it was great.
Yes, I think we all need it right now. I have to set my own often.
Well, thank you all for taking the time to participate in our second session of Serving Our Athletes. Our next session will be next Thursday, May 28th, and focus on the mental side of returning to play. If you've not had a chance to register for the next session, the link to the registration and past recordings can be found on USTA.com on the Serving Our Athlete news page.
And
all
actually,
right, thank you
next
guys.
One is nutrition. Next one will be with Alyssa. Yeah, and she's fantastic. Yeah, she's great to listen to. So
thank you, Becky.
No problem. Thanks, guys.